Hello, gamers from around the world. This is Boxenberger, the video game enthusiast from Germany, and I would like to welcome you to today's show, The World of Gaming, your #1 podcast where we discuss everything that the world of gaming has to offer, games, news, and technology. And today we do that with a long-coming guest. He's been avoiding me on podcasts because we used to podcast at least twice a week, and we have been on a podcast for months now. So, big welcome to Pong Soul.
Look, Box, don't throw me under the bus. Listen, this show was scheduled 2 months ago, and I wasn't the one who canceled.
True that. True that. Twice. I had to. It's true. I had to cancel you twice, and I'm so sorry for that.
No, man. I know how it goes. So no. Yeah. I've been busy. I've been missing Xbox Factor podcast because of the job and real life. So that's why. Haven't been avoiding you specifically, Boxenberger. Just time frame. It hasn't worked out. We all know how that goes. So, but no, It's great to be back on here. I love everything that you've done over here, Boxenberger. You know that, man, and nothing but shout out to you and respect for all your videos. Even though you don't get to do those as much anymore either, it's still fantastic to have you in this community. And of course, we got Dutch. We got my midweek mix-up collective brother here as well, which you added. Here. The last time I was on, it was just you and me, and now we got Dutch. So this is going to be a special show. Glad to be here. So chat, you guys are all looking great. We got a lot of topics, Box. We got a lot to talk about.
We do. But I also want to welcome our beautiful co-host here, coming in with the glasses here today. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Yeah, it's got a double feature. Apparently, I look cool, and secondly, it helps with eye strain. So it's a benefit. I'm good. I'm really
good. That's good to hear.
Just been getting teased by a certain someone about a certain game, and
I know. We can't really talk about this, but we will next week. We will talk about that game next week, and we will watch a lot of footage of it next week. But we can't talk about that game just yet.
No.
But I also want to welcome this amazing community. The chat is already filling up with a lot of familiar names, a couple of new ones too, and everyone is welcome here. Just say hi in chat. We have the most welcoming gaming community out there. And I also want to say a big thank you to everyone who listens after the show on the podcast services around the globe. We are on Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen to your podcasts, you can watch The World of Gaming. So big shout out to you guys as well. And I already want to say a couple of big thank yous to some of the supporters of the channel, because the first super chat of the day came in before the show even started. It comes from Drawn TJ, and he says, "Hi guys, do you think Microsoft needs to pull the offer of 3 years after what's going on?" Man, I have that exact same thing here on the topic list. We will get to that, Drawn TJ. Just give us a few minutes. We also want to say a big thank you to Andrew Sauce, who sends in a $5 super sticker. Thank you, man. And we have Fantusur, who is a 3-month channel member, and he says, "Evening gamers, I see Dutch channeling CC Top." Yeah, man, I'm getting those vibes too. Good stuff. So, guys, we will talk about, of course, what Drawn TJ already mentioned. And I know Dutch is getting a little tired of the whole Activision Blizzard acquisition, but we have some news on that, and we're going to talk about it, man. We're going to talk about this. We will also talk about Starfield. We got a couple of great news there. We will talk about Gamepass coming to Meta and the revenue that Gamepass made last year. We will also talk about that teased streaming device. We will talk about the Square Enix rebranding, PS5 shipment numbers, Redfall rumors, and a lot more. But first, we need to talk about our games of the week. All right. You see, Pong, that the jingles haven't changed.
No, I was expecting that one.
See,
I like your new intro though. Your new intro.
Thank you.
Fantastic.
And maybe we need to redo the jingles as well now that we have the brand new intro ready. So yeah, guys in chat, I also want to know from you, of course, what have you been playing? Pong, what kept you busy?
Wow, not a whole lot because life has been so busy. But well, at least during the week, I haven't been getting as much gaming as I normally do. But last weekend, once Blizzard got their act together, I finally hopped into some Overwatch 2 and got to play a bunch of that with the crew, Steel, Mav, Psycho, everybody, and had a blast. It's not Overwatch 2, it's Overwatch 1.5. Let's all be real here. This could have been easily an update, but they did what they did. But plays very well. Enjoyed the hell out of that game. And then I actually had zero plans of getting wrapped up into this game, but then I wound up getting wrapped up into it. And I put a tweet out about it early in the week. Medieval Dynasty.
I've seen that tweet.
Yes, which came out on Game Pass. It's been on PC. It's got high ratings on Steam. And I jumped into it. I jumped into it for like 20 minutes when I first downloaded it, and I almost uninstalled it because the first person view, this thing's only 30 frames. It's supposedly optimized for Series X and S. It's only 30 frames, and the first person view, it normally doesn't affect me a whole lot, but this one did, and I was like, I'm out. Then I hopped back into it and figured out there's a third person view. Third person view is good. I can do the third person view even at 30 frames. So I started fooling around with this game. Again, not expecting much. I became addicted. It is a survival town management game. And so it's not going to be for everybody by any stretch of the imagination. It's not going to blow you away. It's Unreal 4. No, it's Unreal 4. It looks great in some areas. It looks really beautiful. And in other areas, it's like, okay, well, this is more AA than anything. But I just love the loop. The survival loop are all different in certain games of how you go collect resources and that kind of stuff. In this game, for whatever reason, it hits me right. So I've been playing Medieval Dynasty a lot.
Sweet.
And enjoying the hell out of it. And again, we do this all the time, but I always think it's important to bring up. This is the beauty of Game Pass. And this is why I love it so much as a grazer, somebody who plays all different styles of game. This game I never would have paid money for. I never would have jumped into it and tried it out. And here I am getting to enjoy it on Game Pass and finding out that I actually love it. So
yeah, that's really the beauty of Game Pass. It just lets you try out stuff. And Dutch, I know you've been playing it too. We get your thoughts in a second. I just want to see what the community has been playing. We see Drawn TJ played Overwatch 2 as well. I've downloaded it, but I've been busy with something else. We'll get to that in a second. So I wasn't able to try it out yet. Bellantone played also Medieval Dynasty, Grounded, and Skyrim. Paul is playing Protoss and Battlefield 2042, Forza Horizon 5 as well. We have Amblix playing Days Gone with the graphics and zombie mods. Man, I actually really like Days Gone. I didn't know that it supported mods on PC. That's good to know. I had no idea. And well, what else do we have here? We have Doom Reaper playing Gears 5 and Protoss, and Resource playing Far Cry 6. Man, that's awesome. I really like that. And Amblix shouts out, yes, Age of Empire update next week, guys. Next week. Okay, I have something prepared. I know you guys getting tired of me loving Age of Empires 4 and playing 350 hours of it, but I have a great match here playing in Gold Rank 3. The season is almost coming to an end, and we're just gonna watch that today before we get to some other gameplay, because I want to end this season in at least Gold Rank 3, if not Platinum 1. That's my target, and I have 2 more weeks for that. So yeah, man. Brandon is also playing Elden Ring, and Phantasor as well. So good stuff. The community is on fire this week with their game choices.
There's a lot of games to play right now, Box. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot. People always complain because we don't have the AAA. There's a lot out there. That Proteus game that a couple people brought up in chat, amazing. Absolutely. If you love the old school Doom, That game is phenomenal. Just get these games that drop out of nowhere that turn into something. And let me give you one last thing. Anybody looking to play Medieval Dynasty and you heard me say 30 frames and you're, no, I'm not going to do it. Listen, the devs have already come out. Publisher came out and said that they're working on patches and they are going to be fixing it. There's a lot of pop-in as well. So look forward to that. But there are patches. They are planning on trying to get it to 60. So they are currently actively working on it. I just want to make mention of that.
And it is just, like you said, there is so much you could play, especially when you subscribe to Game Pass. Although I must say, PS Plus also offers a lot. I still don't think it is the same value. It's still a good offer, though, if you're not on Xbox and a PlayStation only gamer. So no, man, great times here. And yes, painful discourse in chat. I see you. Scorn coming tomorrow. So there's really a lot to play. Dutch, so what have you been playing, man?
Myself, I haven't actually been playing that much this week. The only thing I have been playing was Sea of Thieves on Tuesday. Yesterday, I didn't really get up to anything. I'm cat sitting at the moment, so cat is in a new environment. So it's more just I've been looking after a cat. But no, Sea of Thieves yesterday, and of course, tomorrow, Scorn, which I'm really looking forward to.
Sweet.
So yeah, that's it. Nice and short and sweet.
That's cool. Tron TJ sends in a $2 super chat. Thank you, man. And he says, I'll have to play that Pong. Yeah, you do, man.
Absolutely, brother.
It's a classic. Yeah. Classic. I don't know. Was it really the very first video game per se? I think I once heard that there was one other game that was actually the first, and this was the second. I'm not 100% sure, but it is still a classic. It is, absolutely. So yeah, what have I been playing? I've been playing a little bit of H4, and mainly I'm playing a game I can't really talk about. So my answer to this week is really, really short. But on Monday, you guys will find out. You guys will find out, and it's going to be exciting, man. So yeah, that's about it for the games of the week. So let's get to the news of the week. All right. A lot of stuff happened this week. And I know everyone wants us to talk about the ABK thing and what's going on there, and we will talk about it in a second. But first, Starfield. I know, Pong, you are at least as excited as I am for that game. I know that Dutch is super excited and has already planned in to take a couple of days of work, just as I will. So yeah, we got a couple of great news about Starfield this week. There was like this developer interview or dev diary or whatever you want to call it out there on YouTube. Highly recommend to watch it. Todd Howard got interviewed, and we learned a couple of great things about the game. He first talked a little bit about the detail that they put into space flights, where he said, well, I'm just gonna read a quote from the whole thing. He said, "We were really into fuel and how the gravity drive works. I'm reading papers on quantum physics and bending space in front of you. You don't actually warp. You bend the space toward you, bring the space toward you, and so we were playing that, and it became very punitive to the player. Your ship would run out of fuel, and the game would just stop." So there is a fuel mechanic coming in Starfield. We also learned a lot about the quest system and the dialogue system. They said they went back to a little bit more classic Bethesda dialogue system. He said the following: "We have a way in the game, kind of an activity or quest you can do to remove." Hang on, it's now I'm jumping in my chapters now. Sorry, I'm reading the wrong quote here. He said, "The studio has gone back to classic Bethesda-style dialogue system for Starfield, which sees players looking at characters and how they emote before choosing how to interact with them." They also then elaborated that you have like a system where when you want to persuade someone, you have certain points that you can spend on different answers depending on your skill level for persuading and stuff. They also said Starfield has now more than 250,000 lines of dialogue. In comparison, Skyrim had 60,000 and Fallout 4 had 110,000. So this seems to be just an insanely deep and big game. So yeah, guys, I wanna know from you, what do you make of these new infos from Starfield, and where's your hype meter? Pong, since you're the guest, let's start with you, man.
Listen, I still cry myself to sleep every night. We would be less than 30 days out right now from Starfield releasing. Obviously I'm all for the delay, but this one hurt. So these little tidbits of information sometimes are bittersweet to me, but this one definitely got me excited to see Todd. To see Todd being interviewed, and again, I always say this about him and most of his team that I've seen interviewed, the confidence level that comes through on camera is incredible. So when he talks about this stuff, like, it makes me sit up and want to listen and to break down everything he had to say. So number one, the fuel system that you talked about. They talked about how they did have it so that you could run out of fuel. But then he said, well, then the game just kind of ends and the players just want to get back to what they were doing. So instead, they went away from the fuel management. And now what it's going to be is based upon your fuel and your hyperdrive is going to determine how far you can actually travel in one move, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So they obviously looked at it. They obviously had it incorporated and then played through it and said, well, this kind of takes away from the experience, or this is too much, or whatever the case may be for the player to have to deal with. So good to hear that they decided to move in this direction. Obviously, somebody will probably mod it back into the game where you can have that kind of survival aspect. For me, I think the survival stuff is cool. I was just talking about Medieval Dynasty. I like survival games. So some of that fuel management stuff, I was kind of like, oh, that kind of sucks. But I understand from a gameplay perspective why they may have decided to go away from it. But that sounds cool. And him talking about him reading, he's been reading up on quantum physics and all this kind of stuff. I expect nothing less from this team. This team is so in-depth when it comes to their games and getting the little details right that I love to hear that stuff. And then as far as the dialogue and them going back, we heard from the beginning, Boxenberger, if you remember the early interviews, that Todd said they were going back to their roots, that they were getting back to more of the traditional RPG style, which is what they got away from in Fallout 4 that some people didn't necessarily like. So when he comes out and confirms that we've gone back to a more classic Bethesda dialogue system, listen, I know some people say Bethesda should change, Bethesda should try things new. Why do the Bethesda fans want the same thing over and over again? Because folks, let me tell you from one of those Bethesda fans, they make generational type games. Their games are still being played. We just had the 10th anniversary of Skyrim. Now, people go back to Fallout 3. People go back to Oblivion, Morrowind. There's a reason for that. And I just want Bethesda to do what they do best. And so to hear that they're going back to that style again, I pulled at the heartstrings, Boxenberger. I cannot wait. And then with that new little point system they added to Persuasion, that's got me very, very intrigued. I can't wait to see how that works out. But this overall was a great interview. He talked about the traits as well. For people who don't know, they are going to have a trait system. We got if you pause the video, some people paused and took screenshots. They're out there. We got a couple of additional traits, that we hadn't seen before. The list is huge, but we did get to see some descriptors, a couple more. But he talked about how sometimes if you picked a trait in other Bethesda titles, and then all of a sudden you realize you didn't want that trait anymore, because every trait comes with a negative effect as well. And so what he said was, we've designed a quest where you can actually get one of those traits permanently removed, so you don't have to rebuild a character if you're hating what the trait has done. Which
is awesome, because especially with these 100-hour plus games, you sometimes just realize 30-40 hours in that certain choice in character trait or whatever you made isn't just working out for you, and you want to play the game differently, and that and you can do that. And yeah, like you said, Bethesda games are games for the ages. I'm still playing occasionally Skyrim. I'm still going back to that game every once in a while, and yeah, that's why they are so special. And Starfield really sounds like their most ambitious game to date. And so, yeah, Dutch, what do you make of this?
Yeah, I mean, it's the one thing I like specifically. I'm looking forward to the most is obviously not just the dialogue system. The dialogue system, it's obviously great to hear that they've got something like, is it 200,000 or something plus lines?
250,000, yeah.
250,000, which is insane, of course, compared to Skyrim, which is what we used to. We used to hear all the ridiculous things they'd say in passing comments, and that's always the great fun things as you walk past some of these NPCs and they say something out of the. You're like, what did he just say? And then just go back to them and they end up maybe have a fight with them, maybe just take them out because they were cheeky. And you never know. It's always good fun. And the one thing I love about Bethesda games in general, and specifically the likes of Fallout and Skyrim, is that everyone's playthrough is a little bit different. No one is the same. But the one thing that intrigues me the most about Starfield is the factions that they have in this one. Space pirates and things like that is great. Of course, there's the overall picture of the fact that there is kind of this ancient war that's happened like 100 or 200 years ago prior, and they kind of still very much not friendly towards each other, but they kind of live in harmony ish. But underlying tensions, and I think kind of overall, I'm really looking forward to seeing where the story goes on this one. Personally, I hope, of course, it's going to be a little bit more of a serious story. The one thing I did love is Obsidian's take on the Outer Worlds and the way they did the dialogue system. So I kind of hope there's a little bit of humor in the game as well. Just from what I kind of experienced from Outer Worlds.
That's interesting. But did Bethesda ever have really like much humor in it? I mean, Fallout 3 didn't take itself too serious at times, but
Skyrim had intentional and unintentional humor. So
the unintentional stuff I remember,
like the super fan, like the narrow knee to the arrow to the knee, that kind of stuff. So yeah, they have their own twist on it. So I think we'll probably see some of that. They did confirm that the super fan trait is back, so you can have an annoying person that follows you around, comes up to you and talks to you and brings you gifts, but talks complete nonsense for like 5 minutes. It's crazy. I love that.
Yeah. So it's that kind of thing that I'm looking forward to the most, really, from the game itself. Especially if the dialogue's expanded that much, I'm expecting to see some really crazy lines from NPCs, and that's the type of stuff you love to see. Especially, like I say, when everyone's game's a little bit different. There's seeing people do playthroughs of games like Skyrim and Fallout and things, it's always interesting to watch because no one's gameplay is the same. No one like it handles the same and things like that. And obviously everyone is technically playing the same game, but no one's playthrough is the same. Never has been, never will be. That's what's great about Bethesda's universes, is everyone has a different story to tell about the way things went down and the choices they made and what fights they got into, and again, memorable moments that you have, like again in Skyrim, the first time you come across a giant or a troll, and you get completely wiped out of the universe with one hit. It's those type of things that I'm looking forward to. Of course, I still hope, even though we want a clean Bethesda experience this time around, I still hope there is some Bethesda bugs in there.
Yes.
It kind of wouldn't be the same, right?
It wouldn't be the same if it didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
It wouldn't be the same if it didn't. Like even like silly things like horses like galloping like really strangely, like like what's going on? But all that stuff's parcel of it. You kind of miss it when it's not there. And I remember one time they'd removed a bug from it, and people complained that it was gone. It wasn't there anymore, so they put it back in. They were like, fair enough.
No, that really is one of the greatest parts of Bethesda. People don't understand, like, there are certain bugs that, yes, you can't have in a game or shouldn't have in a game. But people don't really understand us as fans when we say the Bethesda bugs give their games character. There's a certain thing. Like, Skyrim, I wound up having a dragon attack me, and all of a sudden I looked at the dragon as it's flying overhead, and it's got a giant on its back pounding its head with its club while it's riding on the back of the dragon. Like, that stuff, that's the stuff, those are the stories that people like Dutch were saying. Everybody's playthrough is different, where you find something that nobody else did. You guys could have both played for the same amount of time, and all of a sudden you could be talking to you, and the buddy goes, "What? Where did you find that?" And now we're talking about a game with 1,000 worlds in it. And I know not all of them are going to be populated. I get that. But just imagine what's out there that we're going to be able to explore that somebody else may never find.
I can't wait, man, for people sharing screenshots of beautiful, gorgeous planets that they just discovered, and everyone's going to have the chat, oh, where did you find this or that planet? And it's going to be awesome. And even if you play yourself for the second or third time a Bethesda game, you always have a different experience. And that's just what is so great about them. They never give you a direction how you need to play those games. And I think that's really the unique thing about Bethesda games. You can be that guy that does every little side quest and max out all the stats, or you can just enjoy the main story, and not discover like 80% of the world. It's totally up to you, and that's really the beauty. That is really the beauty.
This one, you'll be able to find a barren planet and build your own base, and you could sit there and watch the sunrise and the sunset as you collect resources.
Exactly.
Like, that's the whole thing.
Exactly. So the big question here is, we had the rumor this week that Redfall might come in March. Now, where do you guys think Starfield will land? I also want to know that from the chat, guys. People, let us know, where do you think will those big AAA games from Xbox land next year? Yeah, we have Starfield, Redfall, supposedly coming in March. Where will Starfield land? Where will Forza land? Now, Pong, Starfield, what do you think? When will we actually play it?
January 1st, 2023. That's
dude.
No,
I
that's
hate you. I hate you when it's not gonna happen, man.
I know it's not. I wish it could. Obviously I want it sooner than later. And this is always hard for me, but right now, with the way that they're pushing Redfall and that March date is realistic. I was hoping Redfall would be January, and then I hope we could squeak out Starfield in March or April. That's what I was hoping for originally. If this March date is correct on Redfall, the way that they're pumping out the Redfall information, that's the first game out the door. So then Starfield will be second. So then I've got to say, if the March is real for Redfall, I would say the end of May, beginning of June, for Starfield. I think that's where it sits at. I'm not going to start with the talk. I know Rand's been out here and stuff saying, well, it could be delayed again until fall. I can see it. I don't want to hear that right now. So I'm going to say end of May, beginning of June for Starfield.
Ah, sweet. So I think a lot of people in chat agree with you. We have here OCD Gamer says holiday season, Noobs and Pro says holiday season, Buck says August 23. He says Valentine's Day, Doom Reaper. I mean, it says Valentine's Day, most likely May. Siki, also good thing. Masshole, fourth quarter. So a lot of people push it to the back of the year. Dave Ramos also says Starfield November 23.
Chat, stop! You're killing me right now.
Poe has my guess June, because I think they will drop it on E3 stage next year. Todd Howard will come out and says, guys, it's finally finished and it's ready to play. Go download it in Game Pass right now. That's my prediction, but what do you think?
Yeah, I also think May, June. That's if Redfall is March, you don't want to have them too close together. Obviously, you want people to play Redfall and be able to play Redfall fully before Starfield comes out, because as soon as Starfield comes out, everyone's going to drop Redfall and play Starfield. So you don't want to do that to Starfield, realistically. You want to give a little bit of breathing space. So if Redfall comes out in March, then May or June. Forza, on the other hand, I think is going to drop around the regular Forza Horizon release date time, so like a September.
So September, okay.
Yeah, August, September, I think. personally, and that's just because that's historically when they release a Forza. Like usually in cycle.
So you're saying Xbox lied, Dutch, that they weren't showing games within the next 12 months?
It depends because it's not that they weren't. I think Forza's original attempt was to release earlier, but I don't think it is quite ready to release within the first 6 months.
Yeah, it is a tough question because, like, their entire E3 this year, or Bethesda, Xbox and Bethesda Game Showcase this year, was based on the excitement around it. Was supposed to be you get to play that in the next 12 months. So they had to be really confident in order to do that. That those games hit those 12 months mark. However, the last interview that Turn 10 gave really put doubts into my mind as well, because that they said in the last interview, like 3-4 weeks ago, that they expect the game to enter the final polishing phase of game development in January next year, and that they are still working out core gameplay mechanics and stuff. So I'm not 100% sure, because like that polish phase is usually also like 6 to 12 months, and not like 3, 4, 5 months. So I'm not really sure if Forza is gonna hit, but I also think that Xbox had at least the very, very strong intention to release those, because they didn't announce anything new in terms of first-party content at the Xbox and Bethesda showcase. So it really was built around, hey guys, you're gonna get to play those games in the next 12 months. And so I'm really confident that they had at least the intention to hit that target.
Here's another one for you. Why won't Todd come up on stage at the Game Awards and say releasing December 31st?
Because that wouldn't hit the 12 month window.
No. This December.
Oh, this December?
Oh,
you're talking about the Game Awards.
Yep. Sorry, I was at Gamescom in my head next year. So I'm sorry. Yeah.
Like, what?
My bad. Sorry, guys. It's been a long day.
Game Awards.
Oh, that would be sweet.
There's a release date.
That's the next big question. When will we get the release dates for basically all these games? Yeah, we're waiting for a lot of them. Of course, we always talk about Forza, Redfall, Starfield, but there's also...
essentially, it's the last big stage left this year is the Game Awards.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. When the ABK deal goes through, they'll announce the release dates.
Yes. But that would mean it is at least March or April next year.
Yes.
That they wait that long. I think we will find out about the release dates this year too. Honestly, I think they will have like a surprise little
like an XO.
I'm not sure if they're doing XO this year, but I think they do like a Nintendo Direct style thing towards the end of the year, and that's when we will find out about also Minecraft Legends and Ara History Untold and all these other Xbox exclusives when they are supposed to come out in the first half of next year. So, but I use your joke as a segue into the next big topic, and that is, of course, the Xbox and acquisition of Activision Blizzard. I think hardly a week goes by this year where we don't have to talk something to talk about on that acquisition. But this week, it really got juicy. I was surprised, honestly, by some of the wording and phrasing that they used this week. So what happened? And by the way, I want to briefly shout out the 100 people that are watching us live here today. Awesome, guys. Shout out to you. Hope you enjoy the show. If you do so, it would be awesome to hit the like button. Doesn't cost a thing, but it helps these little shows out so much. So, but more importantly, thanks so much for tuning in here. Do hope you enjoy the conversation. So this week we had actually a couple of things to talk about. So Sony, we learned what Sony told the CMA. And I read now a quote that I picked up from Video Games Chronicles. And there was a document made public, and it said the following. Sony Interactive Entertainment told the CMA that even Call of Duty games remained available on PlayStation following the merger. The merged entity would still be to engage in partial foreclosure by increasing the differentiation between the versions of Call of Duty available on Xbox and PlayStation. So what they basically said, they expect that that Microsoft is not gonna have parity in games. That could, of course, be like content dropping, add-on content dropping first on Xbox. It could be graphical advantages and so on. And I find that really, really weird, because especially the graphical parity is something that just is so unnecessary and is so anti-consumer. Seriously, like, can you imagine Nvidia putting out a contract that they only will support drivers for the Nvidia cards if games do not look better on AMD's graphic cards, or vice versa? It is ridiculous to me. So I want to use that as a starting point. What do you guys make of this? Dutch already tuned out, so let's hear it.
Couple thoughts on this. Listen, I've gone back. Well, we went back a long time ago and talked about the parity stuff. When it first originally was, when the Capcom contract came out for Resident Evil Village. And, we talked to some people. We talked to, like 3-Bit, who's a dev, and we talked to some other people too, who told us that parity clause is pretty standard, that, Xbox has a certain parity clause. But the more I hear about this, and shout out to Rand, this is why I listen to different podcasts, even if we all kind of have the same mindset, because people think of things differently. The more I hear PlayStation talk about this and how worried they are, Boxenberger, that for some reason, as soon as Xbox has control of Call of Duty, that the better experience is going to be on Xbox. And I'm not talking about the hypocritical nonsense that they're talking about, additional content and all that kind of stuff, which they've been paying for through their marketing rights. Okay. That's the biggest hypocritical statement I've ever seen. Yeah. Like, even for me, who's been looking at this as fun, this is corporate on corporate violence, people. I'm here for it. We don't get to see this stuff or hear this stuff, especially in this industry, who is like top secret. This is a treasure trove of information for us.
That's why I'm still not sick of talking about it. Honestly,
I know, me too.
I find it hilarious to see how these companies fight kind of behind the scenes.
Yes,
it always gives you like a peek behind the curtain, and like you said, Pong, we rarely get that in that industry.
No, absolutely not. So, but back to my original point, when we're talking about the parity, the more that I hear Sony bring this up, the more I'm starting to think that parity clause, maybe it is standard, but the more I think behind the scenes, with the marketing power, the mind share that Sony has wielded for decades now, that maybe their bullying extended to that. And maybe why we've seen such close performance between these two machines. Yes, I know technically they are close, and I'm not a tech guy, but I know a bunch of people who are, and I listen to Boxenberger's videos, so I've got a better grasp than most people. So, but the more I hear this, the more I think that it's possible that they have been bullying these third-party devs into making sure that, hey, even if you can push your game a little bit further on the Xbox Series X, bring it back a little bit. Tone it down a little bit.
Yeah.
We don't want that big of a difference. If we've got some, the 120 frames thing, okay, whatever. Not too many people use that anyways. A little bit of resolution here and there, fine. But do not take full advantage of the Xbox Series X if it's going to create a large enough gap that's going to be noticeable. And I think that might actually be happening here. And again, it's just something that keeps continuing to pop up, whether it was the Brazil documents and now the CMA documents. I got to question that, and I got to wonder if that's been going on, and they understand that when Xbox gets a hold of Call of Duty as a first-party title, even if it is multi-plat, of course, as a first-party title, Xbox isn't going to tell Activision, Treyarch, Infinity Ward to hold back off the Series X. Of course not. And I think Sony might be a little bit worried about that.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up a lot of great points. I give my spiel in a second, but I want to hear from Dutch first. What do you think about this, statement from Sony?
The statement that before Microsoft responded.
Yes, before. Yeah. We're getting to the Microsoft response in a second.
It's misplaced concern. It's false concern. It's hypocrisy. There's a lot of words we can use for it, but it's essentially Jim Ryan is doing what he would do in order to protect the business he works for. It's his job to do so. So he'll be getting it in the neck from his higher ups, kind of telling him he needs to kind of say things or do things or essentially make himself look good to the powers that be at Sony. Does that reflect the same to the wider audience though? No. They just look like they're crying about falsities. Essentially, you stop being hypocrites. And it's not just one or two people, like even the likes of Linus Tech Tips have come out and they're PC all the way. Like they are primarily.
They really
PC.
don't give them about consoles usually.
Consoles. Yeah. And for them to come out and even jibe at Sony as well, it's ultimate hypocrisy. I don't know why they want to go down that route. It does make them look bad. It makes them look cheap. I don't personally understand the route they're going for because it won't win. And I said this about kind of the route that they took with the Brazilian regulators because they said the same things to them. And Brazilian regulators were obviously rubbed up the wrong way by it because they went out of their way to pinpoint the fact that we are not here to look after you. We're here to look after the market and the consumers. Like that was a dig directly at Sony. So
yes,
their comments, it's like I say, it's misplaced, but it's also hypocrisy.
You bring up a great point. I mean, it goes to the very first super chat of the show where Tronty J asked if Microsoft should remove that 3-year offer because, like, the more you complain like that, the more you poison your business relationship that you still have with Microsoft. Microsoft is still publishing and bringing out a lot of games on your platform. They had like Deathloop and Ghostwire, of course, but there's also stuff like Minecraft still available on PlayStation, big on PlayStation, and Call of Duty. Like they said, their intention is for Call of Duty to remain there. So they will have and we also know about Diablo and a couple of other Blizzard games, Overwatch, and so on, gonna be continued and supported on there. So you have actually a lot of business relationships going on. So the question really is, how much do you want to poison? Because at some point, I don't know whether they will put or remove literally the 3-year deal, but what I could see them do is remove the part where they say, well, we'll bring all DLC at the same time. Like stuff like that.
I wouldn't, because the one way you make your competitor look worse is by continuing to look good. So the more you continue to do good and continue to keep your word and continue to be the good guy, and the more your competitor continues to whinge, you're going to win the mind share. So if you don't change anything,
it's also true. Yeah.
And you literally stick to your word and say, no, we told you we weren't going to do this. We told you the content will stay the same. We told you we're not going to get into that route. And we're keeping our word. We're doing this for the consumers. And they keep playing at that consumer route while Sony are going, yeah, but it's bad for and it never turns out to be bad. Then it shows that Sony are literally just talking rubbish. Because if Microsoft prove them wrong by doing what they say they're going to do and keep it where it is, it's only Sony that looks bad at the end of that because it shows that they were just talking out their arse. And that's essentially what they're doing. So personally, I think if Microsoft continue down the route of the good guy, and Sony can whinge as much as they want, time will tell that Sony were talking out their arse. And it's only going to play badly on them. It can only go that route.
That's a very, very good point, man. Let me briefly read a couple of super chats. The first comes in from Andrew Culinane. Man, I'm sorry to butcher your name like that, man. Thank you so much for the support. He says, if Sony blocks the deal, I would pay whatever ridiculous amount to Activision to get Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox. If that's how they want it, that's how they can have it. Yeah, it is a good question. What will happen if that deal actually fails? I remember the good old days where we had like Reggie Fils-Aimé from Nintendo and Sean Layden from PlayStation and Xbox Phil Spencer coming up on the Game Awards stage together, like kind of celebrating, hey, we are one big community. Yes, we are competitor, but we also try together grow the same industry. And the longer this deal and this acquisition and all the back and forth goes, I kind of feel like this is really poisoning the relationship in between the executives. So yeah, it is an interesting question. What could happen if it fails?
Let me say this, Boxenberg. Let me say this. To that point, as far as poisoning the relationship, listen, I've said from the beginning, if I was Phil Spencer, I would have gone scorched earth a long time ago. But that's why I don't run billion-trillion-dollar companies, right? That's why. All the moves that they made and all the nice guy, whether it's real, and I think a portion of it is genuine, especially from Phil. He does want the good for the industry. He's still hunting for number one spot. He wants Xbox to be the biggest player in this industry, but he doesn't want to kill people off in the process, right? He doesn't want to break, that kind of rhythm that this industry has found by killing off Nintendo or Sony, right? That's not in his, DNA to do that. He understands that a healthy industry is better for everybody. And so I think part of it is genuine, but all that nice guy stuff, all the stuff that they've done up to this point, all the words that they've said, all the times that they've proven to be, true, like Minecraft, keeping it everywhere, expanding it, etc. All of that stuff has led to this point where that Sony questioning the motives behind Xbox and doing all of this whining per se. Again, I'm with Dutch. Jim's doing his job. He's protecting the stock price of Sony, all that kind of stuff. They don't care what it looks like to us. Like they could care less. What they care about is their stock price and their bottom line. So he's doing what he has to do. But all of that stuff, because of how Xbox has treated certain properties up to this point, makes it look ridiculous. Like we're saying it points out how hypocritical Sony is, because they've been doing all the dirty stuff that they're talking about, right? Whereas Microsoft has not shown the propensity to do that. They tried it a couple times, and the last time was Tomb Raider, and it backfired them on completely because everybody stuck up for Sony, right? So it's all led up to this point where they can go into these proceedings, they can go into these regulatory bodies and go, look, we've got the proven track record of how we're going to handle this stuff. If you don't believe us, that's fine, but we've got history on our side, and we're telling you going forward, this is what we see. And then they can start educating these regulatory bodies without having the regulatory bodies looking back and going, yeah, but what about this? What about this? And people point to the ZeniMax deal. But the ZeniMax deal, they've done everything they said. ESO, Elder Scrolls Online, Fallout 76, those are all still available everywhere, still being supported everywhere. Right. So they never said that Starfield wasn't going to be exclusive. They said all new IP going forward are going to be exclusive. So they were upfront about that. So they've got this truth on their side, to Dutch's point. So for me, I understand why people would love to see that happen. I would love to see it happen. I think you're poking the bear, but I think that Microsoft is going to do things. They're going to get back at Sony in different ways. They're not going to come out and pull Call of Duty. They're not going to buy out contracts and no longer publish games on Sony. They're not going to do any of that stuff. Like Dutch said, they're going to continue forward with what they've promised so far. They're going to show these regulatory bodies that they are real, that they've been truthful the entire time. But on the back end, maybe there are certain games that they were considering to put on Sony, to publish on Sony. Maybe there would be an IP or two, like a Crash Bandicoot or a Spyro or something like that, that comes back once Xbox has Activision Blizzard, and they say, you know what, we were thinking about putting that over on Sony. Nah, they don't get it this time. That stays exclusive to Xbox. And then when the negotiations start, as far as percentages go, as far as crossplay tax that Sony has, that's when you see Microsoft pull up to the table and go, yeah, you remember that Brazil and CMA and EU stuff? Yeah, well, let's go ahead and talk about this negotiation. And they're going to be hardcore when it comes to those dealings where they might have been a little softer had Sony not put up such a stink over this whole process. So I think that they will eventually get back at Sony for a lot of this, because I do think they're upset. I think the gloves are off. You're going to read the responses. Yes. The gloves are off here. They're unhappy. They can put up with a little bit. They can understand from a business side that Jim is protecting his business. They would probably do a lot of the same things, but now it's gone some extra miles here. And I think finally Satya and Phil are fed up with Sony and kind of where they've pushed all these regulatory bodies into a corner with, CMA just basically regurgitating Sony's own words. I think that's going to linger, and I think that's stuff they're going to remember down the road when it comes to some other dealings they have with Sony.
You bring up a lot of great points, and I want to use them as a segue into the next part. But I also want to say two things real quick on it. So the thing is, I'm really not sure about the whole exclusivity thing. I think they will transform Call of Duty completely into an ongoing live service game where we will end up at not having like a yearly release, but we'll get like a great campaign every 3 years and kind of like an ongoing live service game with a major map pack drop or whatever you want to call it in once a year or so. And then the whole thing about exclusivity also will change, because since it's an ongoing game, you're just going to continue that across all platforms. So that's one thing. I think one thing that they will probably do is remove that parity clause. Like I said earlier, this time around, the hardware difference is just significant, and it Call of Duty to shine as good as possible. Why would they hold it back in terms of graphics on Xbox when they can make it shine a lot more on their system? So I think that's, for instance, something where they, like you said, kind of want to get back to them. But let me read a couple of super chats that came in before we move to the response of Microsoft. Dronty J sends in $5, and he says, Forza Motorsport 8, I think, will release July next year. Yeah, man, I forgot to read your super chat. It came in a little earlier in the show where we had the discussion. First, thanks again for the support. And yeah, man, Motorsport in July kind of sounds like a good date for it. I think a racing game is a great summer game, honestly. So could be. And then we have Dave Ramos, who sends in a $10 super chat. Thank you, man. And he says, given cloud usage is currently relatively low still, I genuinely believe Phil Spencer when they say they need the industry to move, and that includes Sony. Hashtag free
frenemy.
What? Frenemy.
Yeah, like a friend
enemy. Yeah, got it. Got it.
Friend close, enemies closer.
And also, just real quick, Boxburger, just real quick on this subject. They are also thinking down the road, because this isn't going to be the last time they're going to be in front of the regulatory bodies. They're going to make other deals. They're not done. It's not like Activision Blizzard closes and that's it. They're all done. They're set. They're going to make other deals. So they are kind of setting up the future road map for themselves. And so that's also important to think about when it comes to how they're going to treat Sony after this deal goes through. Yes. Yeah. Because down the road, again, the regulatory bodies may be looking at their business practices. And if they can, once again, prove that they were truthful in this process up to that point, that's going to go a long ways when the regulatory bodies look at it as Sega or something like that down the road.
Something else. Yeah. Great point. And to Dave Ramos' point, honestly, I agree with you. The thing is about the whole cloud thing. I feel like Xbox is really not just looking like how can we put our competitors out of business, become number one. They are genuinely looking into growing the gaming industry and bringing like the core gaming experience that we all love, that we have on our consoles, to more gamers and try to grow that. If you do that only in the console space, I feel like that's gonna be a hard time because the console market is kind of saturated. Like you have across PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo, always in a generation, like I don't know, 250 million sold units plus minus a couple of millions, of course, but that's where the market is, and it grows really slow. But if you want to grow a business, you got to look at potential, and potential is in a lot of other spaces where people might not want to buy consoles, might not be able to afford consoles, but everyone has a phone. And everyone has access to the internet. So yeah, that's really the chance to grow your business. And I think that's why they genuinely focus on that aspect as well. But yeah, great discussion already. Now let's get to the juicy stuff, because Microsoft responded this week actually to the CMA. And last week we had Luke Steele on, who is actually a mergers and acquisition lawyer in the UK. He represents other companies that try to do acquisitions, and so he has dealt with the CMA a lot. It's his job, daily job, and he gave also a couple of great insights. And this week we have Microsoft now officially coming out and saying a couple of things. I'm going to read again a couple of things because they really accused the CMA of adopting Sony's complaints over the ABK deal. They called it misplaced. And so, yeah, that's what they had to say. These unsupported theories of harm are not sufficient to justify a reference to Phase 2, Microsoft said. Yeah, the suggestion that incumbent market leader with clear and enduring market power could be foreclosed by the third largest provider as a result of losing access to one title is not credible. While Sony may not welcome increased competition, it has the ability to adapt and compete. Gamers will ultimately benefit from this increased competition and choice. Sony engages in conduct today which is reflective of its market power in console gaming, including increasing prices of its consoles without fear of losing market share. In short, Sony is not vulnerable to a hypothetical foreclosure strategy, and the referral decision incorrectly relies on self-serving statements by Sony which significantly exaggerate the importance of Call of Duty to it and neglect to account for Sony's clear ability to competitively respond. Of course, there were a lot of other quotes in there, but yeah. So a lot of this stuff has been said not only on this show, but on a lot of different other podcasts. Pong, like you said, a lot of us have a similar mindset. Everyone has its own takes, obviously, but I think, like, we all agree that these moves from Sony over the last months or 2 years or so have not really been consumer friendly. And for them coming out, increasing console prices in Europe, but not in the US, in New Zealand, but not in Canada. It's ridiculous. And they can only do that because they have that market share. It's because they don't have the same competition with Microsoft like they have in the US. In the US, they wouldn't dare to do that because that would give Microsoft an edge. Over here in Europe, Microsoft isn't really trying, honestly. I always say that because they like simply in marketing and support. But the thing is, here they have that market share, and they can do these very consumer unfriendly things. It's what we've been saying on this podcast ever since this whole discussion started. Now Microsoft comes out and says the same. They also said, well, we always focus on Call of Duty, but that's really not that big of a deal. Even if Call of Duty would become exclusive, it's really not that big of a deal. The main part of this deal, and we learned that a couple of weeks ago from Satya Nadella, is about the mobile aspect of this whole ABK deal. That's really, have you ever heard any complaints from Sony about them being now the owner of Candy Crush? Not really, guys. So yeah, a lot of these statements actually make real sense. So Pong, what do you think? Microsoft choosing like very straight wording. It's strong wording, strong phrasing there, and it's not chosen in an interview or something towards like Sony, but this is directly attacking basically the CMA. Like, guys, this is ridiculous what you do. You're trying to protect the competitor, not the consumer. Pong, justified? Too harsh? What do you think?
No, I mean, is it crazy that they're attacking the CMA for parroting Sony when the deal's not done? Like, this is one of the regulatory bodies looking at this deal, and while the acquisition is actively being investigated, you're going after them. That's like attacking, an attorney while the case is still going on, right?
But you know what? Yeah. You know what Luke said last week, and that was before we had those statements.
Yeah.
If the CMA blocks them, they can take them to court.
Yes.
And you can do that if you have a good point, because then not a regulatory, but a judge is looking at this.
Yes.
And this will become very expensive for the CMA. Microsoft has the longer breath here. And they know that they have the balls. They know that they are going to win, because if you look at all the metrics, everything speaks in your favor, just like the Brazilian regulatory CADE did. So yeah, I think that they really don't care anymore. They said, hey, if they are gonna block it, it doesn't matter. We're gonna take you to court, and then we're gonna win.
But they know they want this done sooner than later too. Boss.
Sure,
they don't want to delay. But yes, I agree with you. What I was gonna say is this is the confidence in this deal that Microsoft has had from the beginning. That's why they agreed to a $3 billion penalty if this deal doesn't go through, that they have to play Activision Blizzard. You don't agree to that size. And yes, I know $3 billion to Microsoft is like whatever. That's still a lot of funds. That's what Sony paid for Bungie. Okay, so it's still a lot of money at the end of the day.
Sure.
But the confidence level has remained the same. And them coming out and speaking directly at the CMA saying, look, you guys are just parroting Sony here. All of this is nonsense. And then calling out Sony on top of it once again, calling out Sony specifically on their BS that they've been putting out there, again, goes back to how Satya sat in front of the cameras in an interview. And again, people could say, well, that's Satya, of course. He's the CEO of Microsoft. What's he going to do? Come out and say, well, the deal's not looking great?
Sure.
No, but when he does that, people forget that when Satya or even Phil do an interview, they're speaking to shareholders as well. And they have to be very careful about how they talk about things. They can't come out and falsify things that could affect stock prices negatively or positively. That's a regulation violation. So they have to be very careful. So when they come out and speak confidently about this deal, that's being truthful. They really do believe they have this deal in the bag, that there's no valid reason for any regulatory body to go ahead and say, no, you're going to dominate the market. This is a healthy, growing industry that's not done. We just heard Strauss Zelnick from Take-Two CEO,
absolutely,
in an interview come out and say there's another 20 years of growth before this industry peaks, right? That's what they believe. This industry is still volatile. Things change overnight in the video game industry. Call of Duty could fall apart within the next 5 years and be a shadow of its former self. Another game could come along and take its place overnight.
Exactly.
That happens in this.
I want to. You brought up Strauss Zelnick. I have his quote here right in front of me. He said in an interview, "If this makes their business more powerful, that's good for us. Ultimately, the consumer votes. And if we create great hits, which is our business, the consumers will show up, and no one can take that away from us. No one can replicate that. If you look at success games like Fall Guys." If you look at Among Us, and there are these examples where these little games, did you think a team of 5 people can bring out a game that puts, like Fall Guys, that puts the biggest of the biggest AAA blockbusters into shade and just outright makes a lot more money than they do? Right. That's the power of gaming. So but please continue.
No. I just think that they did the right thing here. That it's a little odd that it's so public. It's a little odd that it's so direct at this point. You don't expect this, but again, this is the corporate on corporate violence I love to see. I love to see Microsoft not sitting back and just taking the nonsense from Sony. I always knew behind the scenes they were going to educate these regulators. They've got all the receipts on Sony. They've got all of it. They've got the history of what Sony's been doing in this industry for a long time. And I knew they would educate all of these bodies that have zero knowledge about this industry and how it works. So I thought they would do that behind the scenes. But to come out finally says to me that they're now irritated, that Sony has poked the bear enough, and the bear is now upset, and the bear is growling and ready to bite back. And I think that that's what we're seeing here from Microsoft with this response specifically. And I love it. I think it's important that they're out in front of this stuff. I think that, again, yes, you can say, well, all of us have the same type of mindset, but it's legitimate when a group of people, as many people out there, can look at the same kind of information and go, what is Sony talking about here? What are they doing? And I think Nintendo, as in the Brazil deal, is the one that's going to come back and bite Sony in the butt the biggest, because they have dominated the market without Call of Duty forever, basically. I mean, I know they had Call of Duty originally, but they haven't had Call of Duty in a very long time and still found a way to dominate. So for Sony to sit there as the number one market leader, as the company that's dominated this industry for 2+ decades, to sit there and say, we can't compete without Call of Duty, that's a bunch of BS. They have the mind share. They have the market share. Like Microsoft said in that, Sony is scared of having to compete on this new on these new terms that Microsoft
that they
is
cannot start a generation again by increasing game prices, lying to their fans, and so on. Yeah, true that. But man, I know that Dutch unfortunately has to leave a little early today, so I want to get his thoughts before we let him out and gonna continue as a duo here today, Pong. So Dutch, yeah, man, I know you're getting kind of tired a little bit of this conversation. I can totally understand that, man. It's a long conversation for the entire year we've been having it, but still. What do you think of this response from Microsoft?
Oh yeah, so Microsoft responses, you can see they're a bit frustrated with the way things are going out publicly, specifically with the CMA. It's a bit strange to see the UK regulators be so public about it. There is no other regulator that we have seen worldwide that has publicly give a running commentary on what they're doing. It's really strange. Like even Brazil didn't mention it. There's like really hard to find reports from other regulators saying, "Oh, it's moving to phase 2," or "We're just beginning phase 1," or something like this. Smaller regulators, but they've not said anything. The European regulators haven't said a word. It's just going on behind closed doors. I think the reason we're getting so much fuel to the fire is primarily because the CMA is being so open and vocal about it.
It is true.
I think it's very strange, and I think it's caught Microsoft off guard a little bit as well, because I don't think they would usually see this stuff play out in public or want it to play out in public. So what they're essentially doing is just fighting fire with fire. They're saying, listen, if you want to put out this narrative that you're taking Sony's
publicly,
then we're going to tell you how you're wrong publicly. And again, this is all stuff. Not only is they saying this publicly, but this is all stuff they'll have already said and reiterated through to the regulators privately. Via documentation, big legal documentation, not the kind of bullet points we've seen on there. There would have been no doubt hundreds of pages through to the regulators with a lot of counter arguments as well to some of the things said. And of course, in phase 2, we always see kind of, especially when it moves to phase 2, we always see kind of more aggressive language from regulators saying they're concerned. But every big deal, especially of this size, like billions and above, gets the same scrutiny. It'll always move past phase 1 into phase 2, primarily because there is always going to be some form of concern, whether it be little or large. So it's always going to go into phase 2. It's expected, but it's just the fact that I think the CMA have been so public about their response and the type of response that they're giving out publicly, that has kind of prompted Microsoft in responding publicly as well, in the manner that they have. So I don't blame them. Personally, I think it's not going to harm them. Publicly, people are good, like you say. Publicly, people will take it the wrong way and they'll think, "Oh, look at them, Microsoft are crying because they're taking Sony's stance." But they're not. I don't think CMA are primarily taking Sony's stance. They're just publicly echoing what Sony have said so far. And it's not to say that come the actual scrutiny in phase 2, by the end of it, they'll still have the same thoughts. It's a good chance that they'll just not have any problems with it at all once they have all the facts and figures ahead of them. And that is the way it will be. And obviously Microsoft have put that out there and specifically kind of comments surrounding cloud and Azure. And the funny thing is, of course, looking deeper into Azure, they don't actually use that for the streaming portion of xCloud or the gaming segment. They host the games on Azure servers, but they don't use Azure to stream the games, which is really weird to see, but it's also true. If you look into the technicalities of the way they actually stream xCloud, they don't use Azure servers as it stands. So they're not using that to leverage anything either, which is kind of one of the concerns that the CMA had. So they'll have provided those facts to them as well. But primarily, I think it's just the to and fro in public is just a strange thing to say. And Pong was right at the beginning. It's extremely rare you see these things. And I think part of the reason of that is because no other regulator has done it. Like, there is no other regulator has been so public with their responses. But the UK regulator, and
we haven't heard from the FTC in months. Anything, nothing.
Nothing. And the thing is I think the CMA might be trying to be so vocal because of, and it sounds strange, but because of the whole Brexit and the UK leaving the European Union in previous times, being part of the EU, the CMA and the European regulators are pretty much hand in hand. So whatever the EU say, the CMA say, whatever the decisions they come up with, the UK come up with, but not being part of the EU and the regulators not being tied by the hip as they were previously, they're not operating the same. So you won't see the same responses that you get from the EU or the method in which they go as you're doing from the CMA, because the CMA are trying to put a stamp on themselves and trying to prove themselves to kind of the authorities in the UK to say, oh, look, we can do a job against big tech.
It's a great point. Yeah.
I think personally, overall, it's not going to do Microsoft harm responding the way they have. You can understand, and I think fighting fire with fire is probably the best route they can go down.
Honestly, I'm surprised how well Microsoft has handled that in public.
100%.
Because it is really not easy to navigate. Yeah.
No, definitely not. I was going to say as well, the one major thing to take out of it is the regulators can't penalize them for speaking out like that either. They have to follow, as Luke's quite clearly said, they have to follow the rule book essentially, because if they don't kind of have the correct legalities, the correct kind of wording or definitions, or follow the procedural anomalies, for instance, i.e. taking sides or going out of their way to criticize Xbox or anything, or Microsoft, that would be a procedural problem, in which case then it would get pulled up by CAT. So they won't do that. So no matter what Microsoft say in response or in retaliation to their public posts, it won't negatively affect them in that sense, as long as they're providing the facts and the figures to them. That's all the regulators will care about at the end of the day. So,
yeah, you make a lot of sense, man. Absolutely. But yeah, I know you gotta go.
yes,
No problem, man.
A little cat to look up.
Dutch hates me. Dutch hates me. Just say it, Dutch.
I don't have to hate you,
Pong, no one's trying to avoid you. No one is trying to avoid you. No, go take care of your cat, man. And we will be back on this show next week, of course, and as well on the midweeks mix-up podcast next week too.
100%. 100%. Yeah. And thank you again to the chat. Awesome chat. And again, thank you all for the super chats as well to help support the channel. It means a lot. So, of course, even though I'm jumping out, these awesome gents are going to continue the show. So make sure you drop a like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. These guys have got some great opinions, so enjoy the rest. And I will bid you all a good night.
Later, brother.
Later. See you, man. Yeah, Dutch said it beautifully. This community is amazing. And I want to briefly shout out a couple of supers, man. Mr. Joe in the Dark sends in $5 and he says, just want to say hello, gentlemen. Amazing guest as always, Boxenberger. Pong, when are we playing Splatoon 3, Shooter of the Year? I know you two have a little thing going on there with Nintendo games.
Oh, God. I can't believe you just paid $5 to say that to me. Really? Really, Mr. Joanna Dark? Really? Yeah, he's trying to stir up the pot a little bit. Again, all respect to Nintendo and their place in gaming history and the hustle. You just will not see me on a Nintendo console until they decide to come closer to the current decade versus 2 decades ago. That's all I got to say.
Man, we could have now a conversation for like another 2 hours just on that statement alone. But I'll leave that to Mr. Joanna Dark and you, man. Dave Ramos sends in another super chat of $2. Thank you, man, so much for the support. He says, doesn't Sony sound pompous? # taking it for granted.
Yeah. Entitled. They feel they're entitled to their number 1 spot. That's how dominant they've been in this market for so long, and we've seen this time and time again. Though again, we've seen this pattern. Boxenberger, you and I have been around for long enough. This is like it just at the wheel turns. History rhymes, right? It doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And this is the Sony of old once again showing up. That's all this
kind of feels like the start of the PS3 era, and that's when Xbox did with 360 so well, and then they were a little full, and then they started the Xbox One generation, and it went vice versa. And now we're starting here again. It like you said, history kind of repeats itself. Bunty sends in $5, man. Thank you so much for the support. He says, do you guys think this acquisition news on top of news is going to shadow game releases? Great show. Keep up the good work. Enough respect. That's an interesting one.
No, because I don't think so. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it, like I said earlier, each and every week we have a topic here about Activision Blizzard, and I think we all kind of love it because it gives us this peek behind the curtain. On the other hand, I think we also still talk a lot about the games that come out that we enjoy. Next week, we're going to have a special episode, by the way, on Wednesday, for instance, that is dedicated alone to the Deliver Us Mars developers. We have them on for a 45-minute interview. We will do a separate second show next week on Wednesday. So I think we will still talk about games, but I think the great thing about gaming and the gaming community is that you not just only always talk about the games that you currently play. Right. This is always a big part of the whole entire conversation. That's why we start every podcast with it. But I think it's just like we love the business behind gaming. We love the technology behind gaming. We love the stories and how games are getting made, and we love to talk about those as well. And yeah, ABK is the biggest deal that the gaming industry has ever seen. So it is a big talking point.
Overshadow, though, I don't know about overshadow, though, Boxenberger, because let's say Starfield was coming out in less than 30 days, right?
Yes.
We'd be talking about Starfield. We'd be talking about
we talk about Starfield.
right. But I'm just saying our hype, like you said,
Yes.
Boxenberger, I think with podcasting, especially podcasting where you have people that are interested in the business side of things and the tech side of things, the chess moves, this is fascinating to me. And I know not everybody in chat agrees. I know not everybody in the community agrees, but for people like you and I, Boxenberger, this is fascinating because this is something we've never seen. This brings me back to, the Sega versus Nintendo days at its peak, but we didn't have social media. We didn't get all the business side of things that were going on behind the scenes. Like then we just saw them publicly doing advertisements versus each other.
Exactly.
A lot, right? And that kind of stuff. This right here is gold. This is a treasure trove for those of us that enjoy this stuff. That's why we talk about it so much.
And you also didn't have the conversations around the globe at that time. Yeah, you had like your friends, and that's about it. Maybe the family, and that's
what months. We got months old information out of magazines. We didn't have instant access to updates. All of a sudden each week we're getting an update with new comments. Like we didn't have any of that.
Yeah. And now look at us here, sitting here in Germany, you in the US. We have a lot of viewers from Australia, from all around the globe. From India, we have from Sweden, Spain, France, everywhere around the globe. We have viewers and listeners and people that are part of the community and that just engage in the discussion. And that's what gaming is also about.
And listen, with this community too, I don't want to beleaguer this point, but again, with this community too, Boxenberger, think about, we have access to people like Hogue Law, like Luke Steele, who actually do the stuff for a living, but are also gamers, are also a part of this community and show up with a plethora of information that we never would have been able to do to talk to people like that and gain insight like we do right now. That's the beautiful part about this.
Absolutely. Let me briefly shout out our co-host that just dropped out of the show because he became a new channel member, man.
Hey, Dutch.
Didn't know you're still lurking around. Man, you are just awesome. By the way, channel members get access to all the videos, early access to all the videos. They have access to the custom-made badges and emojis. So I truly do appreciate all the channel members. Let me briefly put them here on top to shout them out because it does help a lot to run the channel like I do it. So yeah, thanks again for that support. But man, ABK wasn't the only talking point this week. We had a couple of other interesting things. I want to start with stay on PlayStation because this was something I didn't really see a lot of people talk about, but I thought it was kind of interesting because we had like a very good or interesting take on the sales numbers and the shipments that Sony has being able to achieve with the PS5 so far. So it was reported that last month the PlayStation shipments globally went up 400%. So now this comes, of course, like a month or two before God of War Ragnarok comes out. So yeah. What do you think? I've seen a couple of people say something like, they have been withholding a couple of consoles back so that they are now able, when they have their big hitter, God of War, coming out and release that. Do you think that's a strategy what Sony does, or is just the overall supply chain improving?
No, I think this is very strategic. If I had to give my best guess here, this is very strategic on Sony's part. This is a shift in their thinking that we've kind of been talking about as a whole, as they come to grips with the new reality of this generation. Boxenberger, they had it so easy last gen, right? They got to control they got to control all the talking points. They got to control, when things released. They didn't have to worry about, what the competition was doing, because let's be real, the competition was extremely weak last generation. But now that they're in a battle, and now that they realize that the game is changing, you're not just seeing it on the development side, you're not seeing it just in their acquisitions, but now you're seeing it from, even down to the consoles and, how they're shipping them as becoming more important. And that's why you see God of War releasing this holiday. That's why that kind of worked out. And I know it was supposed to release last year, they had to delay it, but they had all hands on deck to get God of War Ragnarok this year for holidays, which holidays, for people who don't realize, have never been important to Sony or haven't been important to Sony for a very long time.
If you look at the last couple of years, when have they released their blockbusters? It was almost never during the holiday season. Yeah.
And so I think this was very strategic on Sony's part to come. I'm sure they held stock back, started stockpiling stock to make sure that they could drop the PlayStation 5 and have plenty of consoles available through the holiday season, along with God of War releasing, because they know it's going to be a massive game for them. There's no question about it. It's going to be a massive push. If this thing comes out the way that everybody's talking about it, we're talking about Game of the Year quality stuff here. And again, I've always been on board. When we went through the whole DLC conversation, all that kind of stuff. Yes, of course, we all know the story. Corey came out publicly and said it, that God of War Ragnarok started as DLC, but it became so much bigger. But they are turning this into probably the biggest God of War experience that Sony's ever put out. And from that aspect, they wanted to make sure they have consoles in place. And of course, in classic Sony form, they have a bundle with God of War ready, right? I'm disappointed that it's not a limited edition console, but of course, they have the console bundled with God of War. We saw that today. They put it out there today. So that's what they do. They did it with Horizon. They're doing it with God of War. They don't necessarily need to with God of War. I think God of War will sell plenty on its own, but they're still going to make sure that sale counts, right? That they are going to get the console sold. And by the way, you get God of War as well. And that they get to check off both of those tables that, yes, we got a sale for a PS5. Yes, we got a sale for for God of War. Look at our attach rate. It's beautiful. But yes, I think this was very strategic. Good on them. Again, they're shifting their mindset. They now know they can't Microsoft doesn't have any first party this year. Big ones. We got Pentiment coming, right? But no big first party games. Sony's taking advantage of that. But it's also a shift going forward, I think, from them, that they no longer can let Microsoft control the talking points, to have that mind share where everybody's saying, oh, guess what Xbox is doing? Oh my God, look at this, like we did last year, where Sony didn't have anything for the second half of the year, really. They can't do that going forward in this generation. So I think we're going to see this. I think Spider-Man 2 next year, if they can get it done, which I'm sure it's all hands on deck for that as well, that'll be next year's holiday game. They're going to make sure that they have something in the beginning, middle, and end, if they can at all possible, to make sure that they're always in the news cycle and it's not just Xbox dominated, because we already know starting next year what Xbox's domination is going to be like. So.
It's interesting that you say that, because I've been saying that as well a couple of weeks ago, that I truly believe that we didn't get a PlayStation event this year because they don't need it. They had like 3 major releases this year with, of course, Gran Turismo, Forbidden West, and now, of course, God of War Ragnarok. Next year, it doesn't look, at least was what we know so far, that good. They have Spider-Man for next year, but seriously, we all think or expect that game to be delayed into 24. So that's when they need the mind share. And I think that's when they try to have like a bigger event, bigger presence. E3 is coming back. They are probably not going to be there, but they will have their event because they want to take away that mind share, the headlines in the news cycle.
I think they're going to be at E3 next year, Fox.
You think so? I
think so. Yeah. I'm riding on that train, not just because I want them to, but because I do believe that now that they're in a battle, they need to be at the same stages that Xbox are. And again, I'm not saying that's 100% by any stretch of the imagination. Sony does what they want to do, but I think that we might see them return to E3 next year.
Interesting.
Yep.
I'm not sure about that, but yeah, they will definitely have something next year.
Yes.
Because again, Microsoft is gonna dominate next year pretty much from what we know so far, at least from the first party publishers. Of course, Nintendo is gonna have Breath of the Wild. And speaking of Nintendo, Xbox International Podcast, which is of course Crazy Louis, dropping a 250 Dominican pesos super chat. Thank you, man. He says, confirmed, Pong is getting Splatoon 3 to play with Dark. I will get my copy to join you. Let's go.
No, I am not. I'm looking forward to Modern Warfare 2. I'll see you all on Modern Warfare 2, not Splatoon. Okay,
I have to jump on that Nintendo train. I have to look into this discussion with you guys because I'm backing him, Dark and of course Crazy Louis. Yeah, man. So yeah, PlayStation next year. It's gonna be an interesting one to see because all we know is like second party deals, like Forspoken that was delayed. It's gonna come out.
Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, is still targeted for next year. So, but with Microsoft or Xbox having not just the first party games, they also have some amazing second party deals. Like Stalker 2 is coming next year. Yeah, we have Ara History Untold. Diablo 3 will be actually first party by the time, at least a day one Game Pass release, no doubt. So yeah, they are gonna have a killer 23. So, but man. Speaking of Microsoft, let's bring that back to Xbox. You know the legendary shelf of Phil Spencer, and I mean at this point he's just teasing everyone. Yeah. They had a little like a weird box in that shelf. Everyone is expecting that to be the long rumored streaming device, and then the Xbox account actually came out and tweeted directly under Phil Spencer's tweet that he should stop it and not put old prototypes on the shelf.
What did he tell you, boss, about putting old prototypes on the shelf?
On the shelf, exactly. So basically, more or less, yeah, that was definitely at least a prototype kind of thing. So what do you think will this actually be? Do you think it makes sense to have like that rumored streaming stick, like Fire TV stick, similar device? Because I do have a theory, but I want to hear yours first.
Yeah, no, I think it's Project Keystone for anybody who's been paying attention to code names. Shout out to Jez, who broke this story, long ago about this device. Shout out to Jez Gordon from Windows Central, as always.
Yes.
Yeah, Project Keystone is the next evolution or one of the next evolutions in where they're going, Box. So this makes a lot of sense that this is going to come. And I think it's going to come out before the holidays this year. I think that's why Phil did the picture. I think they're close to announcing this. If you look at the picture, he even turned the box towards the camera. Like it's at an unnatural angle so that it showed up.
All that was missing is like a spotlight or something.
Right, a highlight or a circle around.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so no, I think he is teasing this on purpose because it's coming. It's coming soon. I think it might even be announced in tandem with the family plan because that makes so much sense, Box.
I haven't thought about it this way, but that definitely makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, have both announcements because right now, okay, with the way the world is, with inflation killing everybody, energy prices through the roof, especially over on your side of the world, it's utterly ridiculous. Like,
indeed,
people are struggling.
I just got my new bill or price tag for energy, so not electrical energy, but for heating. When I heat, I don't use gas for heat, but the price increase, it's like insane.
Right. And so I think where the world's at right now, not everybody this holiday is going to have the money even for a Series S. Let's say the Series S goes on sale worldwide for, $220 or $199 is what the magic price point is that I've said that I think they might do for Black Friday or right around there. But some people just may not. So you got a family sitting around. They might have a Series X or they might have a Series S, but they've got multiple TVs. They've got kids in different rooms, and most kids nowadays have a TV in their room. How great would it be to be able to offer something like this? Let's say at a $99 price point, with a controller, maybe even with a month free of Game Pass, and to announce the family Game Pass, and all of a sudden the parents, it clicks in their head, my God, we could get a couple of these, take care of all the kids, or maybe we got one extra one for the bedroom, or whatever the case may be. And we get a family plan. So now we're only paying $25 a month. We can have up to 5 people with their own Game Pass. This is a huge move for them. And even if you look outside of the United States and Europe, Boxenberger, when you look to the East, which is so important to Phil in Japan and Korea and China and those places, to be able to offer this where their infrastructure, because we know it's not going to be great for everybody. The experience is going to be all over the place depending on your internet, right? But then you look to the East where they're mobile heavy, where their infrastructure and their internet is so well done that they've gotten used to already over the past 5-10 years just playing mobilely. That's why the Switch is so huge over there. That's why phone games are so huge over there. To offer a cloud device like this could be gigantic over on that side of the world if they go with a worldwide launch. I'm not saying that they will, but if they do, that could be a huge, huge boon over there. That's another access point. Another cheaper access point to get into this ecosystem. This makes total sense to what their goals are. 2 billion, 3 billion people. We already know they're putting apps on TVs. They're putting apps on phones. They invested and partnered with Logitech for the G Cloud. There's supposedly another device that Jez is teasing that we might see this Saturday, the 15th, is what Jez said. Listen, they're going to get Xbox, Game Pass, and xCloud everywhere they possibly can. They weren't lying about that. A lot of people laughed, but they're not joking about that. They want to give people the opportunity to jump in this ecosystem in as many places.
They want to make it as easy as possible. And the thing is, like you said, especially in the Asia market, mobile gaming is a lot stronger. And imagine you have your phone, and you play that mobile game. And then you see, okay, I can get for $10 Xbox Game Pass. Oh, sweet! I'm gonna try that instead of spending $10 on Candy Crush. Yeah,
right.
So, and then you see, and you start playing, and you start to play a serious game on your phone, and then you go into the store, and you get like for $50 a streaming stick or something, and you can continue on your TV and have that experience then, and then continue on your way to work directly on your phone. I feel like in a lot of regions that makes sense.
Yeah.
To me, the question is, why haven't we seen it just yet? It would have made also a lot of sense 2 years ago, along with the Series X and S launch. Why haven't we seen that? And I have a theory on that. I want to put it out there, but I also want to encourage everyone to vote in chat. I put up a poll. I want to know from you guys. Does it make sense to have such a streaming stick? Give your thoughts. The more people vote, the more we will see how the community thinks about this as well. See, I think like 2 years ago when the Series X and S came out, we were at a point where smart TVs have become definitely the norm at home. Streaming sticks like the Fire TV sticks and whatever you have went significantly down in sales. It just wouldn't have made sense for them to release it like that, because you always have 2 entry points with a streaming stick still, because you have the stick itself and you have to still get people to buy a controller. And there was one company that got out of business now, Google Stadia, that did one thing really well. They tried to remove latency by wiring the controller directly to the internet and therefore reducing latency. And I'm not 100% sure, of course, but I do have a feeling that this could be what Microsoft is trying to do, at least to some degree. That this streaming stick is not just going to be plugged into your TV. It's going to be plugged like in your USB-C port on the back of your controller as well, to directly connect to the internet or something. And then they actually sell you a controller, not the stick itself. And the stick is like a given for super cheap entry point.
Right.
But the selling point is actually the controller.
Okay.
Now, this is of course just a theory, but we have heard from Chess and other like Jeff Grubb and other insiders that at some point they had to go back with that for that project to the drawing board. And I wonder if that's the reason. What do you think?
I like it. I like it, Box. I like where you're going with this. It would make a lot of sense because we know latency is the biggest, one of the biggest factors when you're gaming via xCloud.
Yeah.
So it would make a lot of sense that they looked over at Stadia and took some ideas from there. And again, we haven't heard anything. We never really do about the tech side of things. It's very rare that we have, Jason Ronald out here talking about the tech side of things, but they got Orion with the ZeniMax deal. And what if they've been working on implementing that Orion tech into not just regular xCloud streaming, but the device like you're talking about, and they can come out with something similar to a Stadia where the experience does get better than what we've previously experienced. Listen, it's a great idea, Boxburger. I like it a lot. And let's not forget, too, I want to throw this in there, too, that we've heard they're very close to announcing at some point here that you're going to be able to purchase games via xCloud. So if your only access point is xCloud, you're going to be able to purchase actual games on there. That's another big step towards this, which brings it closer to the Stadia business model, which was terrible for its standalone device. But when it's an addition to all the other ways that you can access this ecosystem, I think it makes perfect sense as well. So yeah, I like it.
Absolutely, yes. Especially with Microsoft releasing their first-party games next year.
Yeah.
In like every 2 months, we will get a first-party game or something, and they all current gen only.
Yes.
You won't be able to play a Starfield, Forza, Redfall, and so on your Xbox Ones and One X. So you have to kind of phase those out, and this is obviously for those who do not want to invest in a $500 or Euro Series X or even a 300 Series S version of a console. So, and I don't think they can wait any longer because, like I've said this many times, and I know a lot of people disagree with me, but mark my words, end of next year, beginning 24, we will hear about the enhanced consoles. So, and at that point, you kind of don't want to put out a streaming stick anymore. You kind of want to have that in the middle, in between, as an even more cheaper entry point. So we shall see how this will turn out.
And that's the key. That's the key. Boxburger's price point. It depends what they can bring this in at. If they can get it in at
what do you feel? What's a good one?
Mine, if it is the little box like the Roku or the stick or whatever, $99 with controller, I think is your mark, right? I think anything above that,
even this is too expensive, because at that point, if you reach $100, you're almost at the price point where people will wage it against the Series S. Honestly, the Series S, you will be able on Black Friday, you will be able to get it for like $250 or be even lower, $230, something like that. And I know there's still a delta in between $230 and $100. I know that, but I kind of feel like you want to have that as the impulse buy. I want to give this a chance.
Correct.
I don't know if $100 is that price point where people say, "Oh, I'm gonna invest $100 just to see if this is good." So I feel like I don't know, what's a controller in the US? A standard Xbox
60,
controller.
60.
Yeah, so it's similar here. It's 55 here.
Yep.
So I feel like you go at that price point, maybe $5 more, not more. You really want to push this out. So like, let's say 70. 70. If it's a standard controller is 60. Let's go with 70. I feel like that is then when people say, okay,
if they could do that, that would be fantastic. If they could pull that off, it'll be toy stripped down. I'm just wondering what they're going to have in the box, right? As far as apps go, box, because do you come out with it just being an xCloud Gamepass entry point, or do you offer, YouTube? Do you offer Amazon Prime in there? Do you offer all the other apps that everybody gets to know, where you actually replace a Roku or a Fire Stick? You actually replace that, and it just gives you, the ability, because with that, it might cost more.
I want to bring up a great point from Carolina Gaming in chat. Hang on, I highlighted
Not
the wrong.
ice.
Carolina Gamer 28 says the following, and she's got a point, and she's spot on. The Xbox One is basically a streaming box for cloud gaming. Yes. Exactly. And if you go on eBay, you will get an Xbox One X that runs all the apps you just mentioned, Pong, and everything, and xCloud, and even every now backward compatible game natively, and you get that box for what?
I think
less than 100.
High, aren't they?
Less than 100.
Less than 100?
Ah, yeah.
For Xbox One X? Really?
Yeah.
I haven't looked.
Hang on, I'm gonna check. I haven't looked either,
because
I'm gonna do that right now.
Because I know
live.
Live on the air.
Live on the air on eBay. Xbox One X. 120. You can get one for there's one for 100 as a fixed price. By the way,
Yeah, because they still want 260 at GameStop.
So, yeah, I mean GameStop. Come on. But she's got a point, and that's why I mean, like, you have to have, if you have this streaming stick only, that streams, you wanna have it at a price point where people just give this thing a chance. And I'm sorry, Carolina.
He's a Carolina Panthers fan. He's an NFL fan. So.
Okay. I have no idea, man. My ex-girlfriend was named Carolina, so I naturally assumed. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry.
That's funny.
Oh gosh. All right, man. Okay, we've got something else with Xbox to talk about, and that was the announcement that Game Pass is coming to the Meta store. So you can now, or not now, but soon, buy Game Pass on the Meta store and play via streaming your games on the Oculus Quest, or the Meta Quest 2, and of course the Meta Quest Pro. And everyone who has that headset knows that you have like this gigantic 200-something inch screen when you put that VR headset on, and then you can play that on that screen via streaming. So Xbox is really not kidding around. They are not fooling around. They really try to bring Game Pass to as many platforms as possible. And we've heard it before. They offered a PlayStation to bring Game Pass there as well. We know that 100% there's discussions going on with Steam. There are discussions going on, of course, with Nintendo. What can we do to bring that service to as many platforms as possible? I think it's obvious that Game Pass on PlayStation is probably very unlikely to happen anytime soon. But man, now I've made a little short on YouTube and TikTok, honestly, about this, and I said one thing, and I want to put this to you. We always talk about Xbox needs to bring VR to Xbox, but this way they brought Xbox to VR. So what do you think about this announcement that Game Pass is now available on Meta?
Yeah, this is huge. This can't be understated, not just from the Xbox side, I think, because this was a Microsoft deal. So you're talking about two of the world's most powerful tech companies partnering up, which they haven't done in a while.
They also, me add that real quick. They also announced that Microsoft Office, Teams, and Windows is coming to Meta as well.
So this is a big deal, and obviously, Meta on top of that announced that they had purchased 3 VR studios. So obviously, they're getting serious, into the VR gaming space. They are slowly working in. So what better way than a partner with one of the biggest companies out there in gaming, in Xbox and Microsoft, to help. And I think that this is going to be one of those partnerships that not just one way. I think it's going to work for both of them. Like you said, Xbox is not interested in doing VR right now. We've heard Phil come out. Yes, they made the original announcement that everybody goes back to where Phil was up on stage and said, we're going to be doing VR. And everybody says, oh, he lied. No, things changed internally at Xbox at that point, and they made decisions. And one of those decisions was VR is not ready for us to heavily invest to when we're trying to make this gigantic shift in our gaming division. VR just isn't a part of that equation right now. Now they're making these deals, and we've talked about this, Boxenberger, on this show, on many shows. You've talked about it. We've all talked about it. That Xbox doesn't necessarily need to do their own hardware all the time. They're not a hardware company. They're a software company. What better way than to go to people like a Meta, like a Valve, who already have the hardware, like a Logitech with the G Cloud, and partner with them and just bring your app there. I mean, that's is still accessing the ecosystem without all the R&D work, without all the risk involved. You've already got established companies out here. Continue to do that until like a niche market like VR is right now establishes itself. Then if you want to decide to enter in, you can go ahead and do that. But in the meantime, just get your Game Pass, get your name out to more places, as many places as possible, as we were just talking about. This is a big deal. And I think it gets people more, the more places you have things, the more people recognize. And all of a sudden, everybody just starts expecting it to be everywhere, right? And so when you buy a phone, now you know you can access Game Pass. When somebody goes to buy a new TV in the future, not just Samsung, but I imagine more carriers will have it as well. You'll just expect that you can access Game Pass through there and access xCloud. That's what they're doing here. They're expanding their market into all these different places and making a partnership with Meta. Whatever you think about Meta, look, I don't like the lizard man Zuckerberg either. I don't like Meta. I got rid of my Facebook account about 8 years ago. I don't care about that. The fact is that the Quest is one of the most popular VR devices out there in a lot of ways. They just announced the Pro, which is going to be $1,500 for all of you who really are big spenders. But I think that this is a perfect way for Microsoft and Xbox to continue to move into the future where people can just access that ecosystem any place, anytime. And if VR gets big, even better. If the Quest sells more, even better. So I think that that's what they're doing here.
Yeah, I agree there. I agree. I think it's also testing out the waters for other opportunities, of course. If Game Pass is a success, if customers of VR are actually interested in subscription services, it might eventually go the way that they will support the hardware as well natively on a console, because technically the consoles are powerful enough now to support it. They run on the same architecture, so there's literally no reason other than business agreement that stops from coming VR hardware coming to the console.
And Microsoft and Xbox does have publishers now with ZeniMax and eventually with Activision Blizzard that are doing VR stuff. So it just expands even further, right? Imagine a Forza Horizon 5 in VR, right? Down the road, if Playground wants to expand, now you've got the opportunity to get it to VR people right away in part of Game Pass. So they're going to have a lot of first-party studios that are going to benefit from this as well. So
absolutely, man. I just realized I forgot to close the poll in the chat on our last topic. So I briefly want to close that because we asked the community streaming stick. Does it make sense? 60% said absolutely. 24% said depends on price. 6% said no, we have apps for that, and 8% said Pong needs a Nintendo Switch. So
I like
definitely
how you that one in there.
Definitely. If we would make a poll only about that, I bet the vote would be significantly higher. But man, we've covered already a lot here. So I do hope you have a couple of more minutes, because we always have at the end of the show the community questions, and we have a couple of great ones this week. So I hope you're still available for another 15 to 20 minutes.
I'm still available. I'm going to go let the dogs out real quick, and I'll be right back.
Oh, that sounds awesome. And with that, we segue into the community questions. All right, Pong will be back in a second, which is awesome. And I need briefly to change the gameplay again. So yeah, you guys know the drill by now. At the end of the show, we always discuss community questions because, the community sends in a lot of cool questions during the show. And now I screwed up the gameplay again. The community sends in a lot of cool questions during the show, but sometimes you guys cannot make it live here, or you just have a great idea of a topic or a question you want us to talk about, and that's what the community questions are for. Each and every Wednesday, you can write in on Twitter, on YouTube, actually people send it also via Xbox Live or PlayStation Network. So just send in your questions or topics, and we try to cover as many as possible. And the first of the day comes in from Amblix. He asks this: Hey Box, Dutch, and Pong, hope you are all doing well. With the recent release of the NVIDIA 4090 GPUs, games are being pushed further than ever before. Reports are saying that it is able to hit up to 100 teraflops with overclocking, which blows away the 35 to 40 teraflops the 3090 was getting. This made graphically demanding games like Cyberpunk look better than ever with features like DLSS 3.0. Do new GPU series like the 40 represent a generational leap in gaming to you, or would that be a term more exclusive used with consoles? And when do you think consoles will hit the benchmark being set by the new GPUs today? So
interesting.
Should I go first here?
Yeah, I'll go first because I'll be short.
All
and
right.
You follow up with the tech expert, okay? Because I'm not the tech guy and I'm not a PC guy either. But here's what I'll say in general. In general, it's up to the devs to make those generational leaps. You can give them all the power in the world, but until the devs actually start exploiting that power and saying, listen, we aren't going to concern ourselves with lower power PCs or lower power consoles, but we're going to take full advantage of the 4090s, 100 teraflops, 80 teraflops, I've heard at normal, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Until that happens, you're not going to see that generational leap. The one thing with where we're at now, technology-wise, it's not like the old days per se, where you saw these big, giant innovations all the time. We get incremental, more incremental kind of, moves up the ladder than we used to when we went from console to console. And I'll stay in my wheelhouse since I'm not a PC gamer, and I'll take the consoles as an example. The Series X and the PS5 are certainly leaps, but are they as a big a leap as it was going from Sega Genesis to like PS1? No. I would say no, right? That was a generational leap. But what I will say is somebody who never bought into the mid-gen refreshes on Xbox or PlayStation. I still had my original PS4 and my VCR Xbox One. I was still playing on a 1080 TV screen, okay? When I made the leap to the Series X, when I got a 4K OLED, that to me, it was gigantic, right? That to me was a full leap. But just like PCs who constantly get updated, now that we have these mid-gen refreshes for the consoles starting last gen especially, it didn't feel like that big a leap because we had already seen a little bit move up and then another step up, right? Whereas before it used to be, 8 to 10 years before we get new hardware, and all of a sudden it would be like, oh my God, look at everything that's changed. Holy cow, right? So for me, I just don't think that until the devs are ready to take full advantage of the 4090, until the minimum specs creep up, and we've seen some of that in certain games where minimum specs are finally dropping off some of the low-end PCs. Until that really happens, we're not going to see the devs take full advantage, I don't think, of this, except for maybe a game here or there. Go ahead, tech expert. You take over, Boxenberger. Talk.
I mean, you make a lot of sense. The thing, I would have brought a different example, by the way, not Sega. I would have brought Nintendo, Super Nintendo to N64.
Yep.
Generational leap.
But see, I never bought 64. So
I know. We have to have that discussion about Nintendo at some point, man. But yeah, no, the thing is, like you said, generation leaps have become less noticeable per se. Yeah. Consoles have become more like PC architectures, and so sometimes a jump can be really not that noticeable. We always say we still wait for that game that is like that true next gen experience that blows our minds, like a Hellblade 2 or something. Yeah. But we say, okay, that's really next gen. But if you already look at state-of-the-art 2022 games and compare them to state-of-the-art 2020 games, let's just take those 2 years, a little bit prior to launch and now 2 years into this console generation, you can already see a significant leap in graphical fidelity. Frame rates have become a thing on consoles now. So there is this leap, but is it as noticeable? It depends. It really depends. The thing here about 4090s or GPUs on PC in general is, though, there are no exclusives for them. You will never get a game that is exclusive to a 4090. If we would get that, obviously a developer could do insane things. But PC games, almost every PC game you have out there are defined, of course, in their core gameplay design by the minimum specs. So people need to always look at the minimum specs. And I know I get a lot of shit for that, but I always say if console gaming is held back by anything, then it's the minimum specs that these games require on PC. So yeah, is that 4090 a generational leap? I've seen stuff that looks insane on that graphics card. So yeah, it is a generational leap in GPU design. It most certainly is. Is it gonna be noticeable in many games? There will be a few flagship titles that actually have stuff in their engines that require these 80 to 100 teraflops. But I have a 3080, and there are barely games out there that take full advantage of that game, of that graphics card, which is now already ridiculously outdated. Yeah, but so yeah, that's the thing about PC gaming. You will always have these few tech examples, but the vast majority of games will, for a long time, not take advantage of a 4090. And the other part of the question was, when will we see that come to console? And that is a good question. I've said it before this show. I think we will 100% get a generational, like an enhanced console this generation. In 24, we will get that. I have no doubt about that. Maybe early 25, but somewhere around that point in time, we will get it as well. We will still not land with that console at a 4090, not even close. And I'm not even sure if the next gen consoles that are coming then, I don't know, in 28, 29 will hit the same teraflop count. But does it really matter? Not really, because at the end, the power is not really defined just by teraflops. It's how efficiently you're going to use those flops. So it's more interesting to look at where will the architectures be? Yeah, what will an RDNA 4 or 5 look like if they stick to AMD GPUs in the consoles? The architecture is way more interesting, and the possible tools and pipelines that they can generate with those are significantly more interesting than the raw teraflop count. But still, the 4090 is amazing. And one last thing before we move to the next topic, and before people get bored, I think the biggest thing here is DLSS 3 and what they have been able to achieve now with those dedicated tensor cores. And I've said it to Dutch a couple of weeks ago. I think it was a mistake from AMD to not bet your cards on hardware accelerated AI, on hardware accelerated machine learning. It's incredible what those tensor cores can do and where DLSS is now. And AMD has a long way to go to even come close with Fidelity FX Super Resolution, which is still a great technology, but it's not close to what DLSS 3 can do. And it's because of this dedicated silicon called Tensor Cores. And so that's the generational leap to me. It's new technology. It's not just a raw count of teraflops. But let's move to the next question before my monologue gets too long here. Bavari sends in a question. With Fallout turning 25 years old, what's your thoughts about a collaboration between Bethesda Game Studios and Obsidian Entertainment to make the ultimate Fallout experience, since both the studios are now owned by Microsoft?
Oh my God. Listen, that was one of the first things I think that most of us talked about when ZeniMax was bought, outside of what's going to be exclusive and what's not, was the opportunities for the partnerships between two of the best Western RPG houses out there, dev houses out there. At least from my standpoint, I would love to see it. I always had the idea that you let Obsidian take Fallout and make another New Vegas, or put it in a different city, right? Fallout Chicago, whatever.
We have had that rumor like a year ago or so.
Yes. And it would make sense to me from this standpoint to allow Obsidian to go back to Fallout for Bethesda to make an in-between game, because we are a long ways away from the next Fallout.
Fallout 5. I mean, seriously, we're talking 23 Starfield. So when is realistically Elder Scrolls 6 coming out?
27 at the earliest, maybe, if they are working on it.
Around that time. And then you add another 5 years to Fallout 5. So realistically, we're talking like beginning of the PS or PlayStation. It's easier to say count with PlayStations and generations, because they have numbered consoles. So like PS7 generation.
Yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood. I'll be like 58 literally when Fallout 5 finally shows up.
Yeah, man.
It's going to be insane. So for me, I'd love to see it happen. I'd love to see them, some of these IPs get some break-off games like a New Vegas as one of those in-between style games now, because we're going to have Bethesda, assuming Starfield becomes the generational game or the next big game from Bethesda. That's going to be an ongoing IP. And if they stick to their current model and they don't double their studio size, Todd's not going to change how he makes games. So we're not going to see these games come back around for decades again. So why not have other studios take the IP and do, an offshoot, in between game, because these IP are big enough, popular enough to support an additional game in between us waiting for one of the mainline games from actual Bethesda. I think it'd be huge.
In my opinion, the best Fallout game actually was from Obsidian and not Bethesda games, because New Vegas is my favorite. I fully agree here. Let's not forget, Todd is also working on Indiana Jones. That's definitely not going to speed up things on the other IPs. So that would be cool. And on the 25th anniversary thing, he said, like, make the ultimate experience. What I would love to do is like an ultimate collection or something, and give one of the Fallouts, like Fallout 3 or a New Vegas, like a proper treatment, a remake. And
we had heard that smoke too last year. There was a small rumor that Bethesda was putting together another studio to do remakes. I know Todd has come out and said he doesn't necessarily like the idea of that, but my God, a remade Morrowind, you'd be getting a fresh Elder Scrolls game that would sell like hotcakes.
Absolutely.
Like hotcakes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Great question, man. Nitrama sends in a question and says, I would like more information about Forza Motorsport. What race wheels will the game work with? What I really want to know is it going to support direct drives? How many cars will it have? But most importantly, how many tracks? It's my most anticipated game for the year. Yeah, man. When do you think will we learn more about a Forza Motorsport?
Next spring or next, let's say we'll get another big update probably. Like they said, Boxenberg, and you brought this up before when we were talking about the games and the release schedule. They said they're going to go into polishing phase in January, right? So I would expect to hear something from Forza. I mean, again, we all hope that it was going to launch March, April, but if that's not the case, then I think that we see an update sometime around that time, showing it off again and saying this is where we are and giving a final release date, whether that is like Dutch said, sometime around November, October, or maybe a little bit earlyish. Maybe it's a summer title, but I expect like March, April, we get a big update. They show it off. They're well into the polishing phase. When we get some more details like he's asking for, and then we get a release date on top of it. That's what I expect.
Probably. I mean, I still think that this wasn't everything this year, and that Xbox will like introduce a new format, an Xbox Direct, or kind of whatever it will be, something new.
They better,
and they will do it this year because they have to establish something like that, because the next couple of years are simply too crowded to only have one event per year. And I know there's, besides E3, there's still Gamescom and the Game Awards, but the Game Awards have always been like for more announcements going more into the future and to highlight a little bit better what they have coming up. I think they will introduce a format there that they listen to the community, and the community has been way loud this year about them wanting something like that. So I expect Microsoft to listen, and we will see the first of this show at the end of the year, and that's when we will learn more about Redfall, Starfield, and Forza. Dave Ramos sends in a question. He says, for the folks open to cloud gaming, would you prefer a dedicated cloud handheld, e.g. the G Cloud, or an improved controller that's compatible with a wider range of existing devices, e.g. a premium Kishi that comfortably grips to iPads, Galaxy Tabs, phones, etc.?
I go back and forth on this one, Boxenberger. I really want to see a native handheld. I really do. I know.
I'm with you there.
I know, a lot of people have said, no way, Xbox is never going to invest in that, at least not, in the foreseeable future. That's not in the cards, that a cloud device is much more reasonable that they would come out with. I have a Kishi. I play on a Kishi. I don't play a ton, but I do play it on a semi-regular basis on my Samsung S22 Ultra. So I think it's a great experience for being what it is. I just like the idea of dedicated hardware. And so, yes, I would love to see them do that. I just don't think that they, with everything they've got going on, with all these partnerships that we are seeing, I don't think that they're, I know we've heard that they've prototyped one. I just don't think that they're serious about it right now. I think eventually down the road we could see one, and I'd love to see it, an actual Xbox handheld for sure. But I really want a native Boxenberger. I really do.
Yeah. So with the native handheld, I'm 100% behind you. The G Cloud and similar devices, I don't get. I don't see why you would need that if you have like a Kishi. I don't have the Kishi. I have like a fake thing, but they are so good. These and I have the phone always with me. I have a fantastic screen on that phone. I have a very good Wi-Fi connection on that phone, and I have it always with me. I have a very good battery life in that thing as well, and a native handheld that is made like the G Cloud just for streaming needs to provide all that, and they usually don't. So I really don't get them, but it's probably a me thing. On the native handheld, I'd love that, man. I love handheld gaming. I just love it. The thing is, if I were Microsoft, and I know sometimes we make it sound so easy, but they have the Series S right now, and if we look at the roadmap of chip manufacturers like TSMC that actually manufacture these APUs, and if we see how small they can make those chips in 2 years. There's literally no reason to have the Series S as big as it is. Even this year, you can make the same chip with half of the wattage usage. The exact same chip in the same size, or you can shrink it down to half the size and have the same wattage per square millimeter usage. So, listen, I don't think it's out of the realm of the possible to have like a Series S in a handheld format in like, I don't know, a year or two. I don't think that this is out of the realm of the possible. All you would need, you can use the exact same components, just bring them in a different form factor, and you would have natively run every game there. I'm just not sure if Xbox sees it as a business case. I think this is really not a technical issue. I think it's a business case issue. I'm not sure if they see that as something. But when you look at the success of a Nintendo Switch, you gotta wonder why. Because obviously there is a market for handheld gaming, and provided with a docking station so that you can switch back and forth, and there you go. So yeah, man, I hope they do one. I truly do, but I'm not sure if they will. Last question of the day comes in from Steve, aka XBOX. He says, well, should PlayStation gamers feel let down by Sony? Jim Ryan clearly has no respect for his customers, which he has shown by increasing the price of his games and console.
Listen. Beauty and value is in the eye of the beholder always, right? So again, as a Sony, if I was a Sony consumer at this time, I've been a Sony consumer since they first started in gaming. But if I was a Sony consumer right now with PS5, I would feel, for me personally, because I'm a budget gamer, I would feel slighted by Jim and his decisions. Okay. Would it be enough for me to like sell my PS5 right now? Probably not. But I'd be very choosy on what I was purchasing on the PlayStation ecosystem for a variety of reasons. You know, the saving that they have, all my saves from PS4 are gone because I didn't re-sign up for PS Plus, right? So all my saves, all my cloud saves are now gone. So when I get a PS5, any PlayStation 4 games I want to go back to, I got to start all over again. It's little stuff like this that really irritate me about what Sony has ignored as far as bringing, you know, their gaming into the future. Whereas Xbox is the complete opposite. They've invested so heavily in backwards compatibility and making sure that no matter where you're playing, you know, going from console to PC to your phone, all your saves, everything's right there. All of that kind of little stuff is where I think Sony's been falling short. But again, it's going to be up to that side, that consumer. Every consumer is different. Every consumer looks at things differently. Obviously, just look at the Twitter community we have right here. It's crazy. But I think that Jim has made some very questionable decisions. Sony has made some very questionable decisions when it comes to just the consumer side of things and where their focus is and what their priorities are. They don't necessarily seem aligned to what's best for the consumer all the time. It may be better for them from a business standpoint, and that's why Jim is in charge of Sony. It's not because he's a Phil gamer type of guy who understands his community at all. He won out over Sean Layden because he's a businessman. He was brought in to fix the bottom line numbers. He was there to fix Sony's stock prices and make sure they continuously go up, which is not happening for a variety of different reasons right now. It's in fact going down. But that's why he won that position. The work that he did over in Europe is undeniable. But I don't think that he necessarily is the person that is always thinking about what his gamer wants at the end of the day. It's what's best for the business side of things. And I think you see some of that disconnect. And it's not one big thing all the time. It's a bunch, like I said, a death by 1,000 cuts. It's all these little things that are starting to add up. And you see more and more disgruntlement from, we're a small, tiny bubble in the grand scheme of things, but you do see some more disgruntlement outside of the fanatics, outside of the cult members, that is starting to bubble up. Some people are starting to say, what are you doing, Sony? Really? What are you doing? And I think that unless they course correct in a lot of different areas, unless they turn the ship around, they're going to hear that more and more. So I think personally right now, it's going to depend upon you as a person, whether or not you look at Sony and what they've been doing and go, this ain't right. This is against the consumer, blah, blah, blah. Or if you're still okay with it and say, hey, you know what? I still get the premium games. I can still get my third person over the shoulder narrative driven games, the game of the year contenders that I love because that's what I play. And I'm okay if they do this other stuff because it really doesn't affect me. So it's a hard question to answer, Box.
It is. It is also no secret that I am kind of like that PlayStation gamer that feels a little bit let down lately. I grew up with PlayStation. Well, I was already in my teens when I got the PlayStation 1, but still, I've had every PlayStation ever, and I really like the brand. It's not that I just feel that they have made a couple of moves over the last couple of years that didn't felt like I was valued as a customer. And it's like you said, Pong. It's not just the one thing that they did, like, I don't know, price increase of games, because other publishers did that as well. But it was this openly dishonest communication that really annoyed me. Like, we believe in generations, stuff like that. You mentioned cloud saves. I lost mine as well. I actually subscribed to the damn service to get my saves into the cloud. I did not know that I have to manually copy them into the cloud. So that's how I lost my cloud saves, because I thought they are in the cloud now and they weren't. So yeah, it's stuff like that. It's the missing ecosystem. And the other thing is, of course, that Xbox is seemingly doing a lot of things right. They try to lure the customer in by providing them value, like Game Pass Day 1 games, or Game Pass in general, like little things for free, like cloud saves, like having not to buy the game again on PC, getting it on both systems, having that amazing xCloud service just thrown in there as a given. You take it. I don't have to pay extra for that. It's like they literally give you stuff, except first-party games in 2022. Yeah, and is what Sony still excels at. They have consistently put out exclusive, great content each and every year. They had better and worse years. 21 wasn't the biggest year for them either. But that's what they are very good at. So yeah, like you said, it depends on the gamer and how you see and where you see value. But I've been very vocal about, I want PlayStation to get to lose a significant amount of market share to Xbox this gen. I don't want Xbox to have like 80% market share and 20% to Sony either. In my dream, we have 30% Nintendo, 30% Microsoft, and 30% on Nintendo. So we spread it out, because that's when these companies start to actually compete and fight for our wallet, and that's when we benefit the most. And being located here in Europe, I just feel like Sony has given up on us European gamers, because they know they have the market share. Xbox is not really trying to compete over here, and that's why they behave like they behave. But the things that they have done recently are just not good for consumers in general. It's just how I feel. So yeah, it is an interesting question to ask, and not always easy to answer. But yeah, that almost brings us to the end of the show, man. I want to say two things first. Big thank you to the community. It's amazing that so many of you guys turned up. We had over 120 people watching us live here today. It's so awesome of you guys that you take the time out of your busy schedule to listen to us here, to support us. Big shout out to everyone who supports, of course, with the super chats as well. It means a lot. But most importantly, just for being here, guys, it truly means a lot that you give us your time. I know that it's very valuable and really, really appreciate it. And I also want to say a big thank you, of course, to you, Pong, for turning up here. We had an awesome conversation here today. Shout out, of course, also to Dutch, who had to drop out a little early, but he'll be back, of course, again next week. And yeah, but Pong, let people know. And you have these famous outros that take like forever. So I want to give one thing up front. You don't have to tell people where they can find you, because all you have to do, guys, is click in the description. You will find the links to his Twitter, YouTube, everything in there. But yeah, where can they what can they expect from Pong Soul over the next weeks?
Absolutely, sir. Hey, this was fantastic, Box. Again, thanks for the invite. Took us months to be able to work this out, but we finally made it. I'm glad I could make it happen, because you brother, you already know how much respect and love I have for you.
Same here, man. Same here,
man. And I love talking this industry with you. So to get down, be able to sit down with you and Dutch, who unfortunately had to leave early, I just love hearing your guys' thoughts. That's the best part about podcasting. I say that, and it's real. It's just hearing other people's thoughts. Thoughtfulness on the subject that we all love, on the hobby that we are passionate about. So thank you for having me. It was a pleasure. Chat. Again, I'm tech limited right now for a variety of different reasons. So I'm not ignoring you in the chat. I see you all and I love you all. And it's great to see all the familiar faces. Like Boxenberger said, no matter how much time you take out to watch whatever podcast, thank you. No matter what, because at the end of the day, otherwise it's just me and Box and Dutch sitting around BSing in an Xbox Live chat. Instead, we now have a community that enjoys this stuff as much as we do. So appreciate you all for showing up and all the support and love that you give us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Tonight, you can find me, in fact, in about 2.5 hours. You're going to find me over on Fun Speculations channel, PM in the PM, Pong and Mav in the PM. If you haven't checked us out, please drop by 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 o'clock Central Time. Like I said, about 2.5 hours from now. I actually have the captain's chair on PM and the PM, so it's kind of fun. So Mav gave me that honor when we started the show, and we have a great time. So it's going to be him and I. We're going to be talking all these topics that we did today, plus maybe a couple more depending on what we get to. Join us there tomorrow night, Fun Speculations channel again for Xbox Ultimate. We have a lot of laughs there, folks. We go left, we go right, we go up and we go down, but we do talk a lot of gaming talk as well. 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock Central Time every Friday night, Xbox Ultimate. Saturday mornings, it's living split screen time. That's right, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 o'clock Central Time, 3 p.m. UK time. It's me and my brother from another Steel Rain. We had to skip our show last week. We tried, but Steel was having tech issues. We hate missing it because that's the only time Steel and I get together to talk.
So, you know that's my cooking show. I've told you that before.
Yes, you have.
Because it's always when I love to cook for my kids and wife on the weekends, and whenever I cook on a Saturday, I am listening to you guys.
I love it, Box. Boom cleans during the show, and you cook. You go. So I love it. No, just come join us. We're on Mission 1K. It's our one show a week. We don't do content otherwise. I know that's not the right way to do it in YouTube, but that's what Steel and I have time for. So that's what we do. But we give you 3+ hours, normally 4 hours on Saturday. Him and I, we get the chat involved. So drop on in, check us out. Living Split Screen. Split Screen is all one word. Be there Saturday. Love to see you all there. And then Saturday nights, it's the Shop Podcast with PTK Blam on PTK Blam's channel, along with Fuzzy Belvedere and myself. And we usually have a guest on top of it. Great way to end your Saturday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock Central Time. We talk everything. And if there's time at the end, PTK allows the chat to bring up topics. So, stop on in. It's a great time on the Shop Podcast. Again, PTK Blam's channel Saturday nights. Otherwise, when I can make it, it's Xbox Factor on Tuesdays over on Double Barrel Gaming. Mr. Boomstick, y'all know him. One of the best in the business. 5 days a week now. That guy's got shows. Crazy. But Xbox Factor, 12 p.m. Eastern, 11 o'clock Central Time every Tuesday. Otherwise, everybody, please listen to me. I don't get on World of Gaming too often. So maybe some of you haven't heard this, but guess what? It is the golden age of gaming. There is no better time than right now to be a gamer. Yeah. I can tell you that as somebody who's been gaming since the original Pong, this is seriously the best time. So get out there, enjoy it, have a great rest of your week, have a great weekend, play what you love what you play, and I'm going to talk to you all real soon.
Man, what an outro. Thank you, man, so much. And again, thanks to everyone in the chat who turned up. Thanks to everyone who listens after the fact, of course, on the podcast services around the globe or on YouTube, where it's also available on demand, of course. Again, guys, next week is going to be big. We will have 2 shows. We will have one on Wednesday dedicated to Deliver Us Mars. We will have the developers Kyokin come on. We actually have 2 developers. Awesome. Yeah, we have 2 developers of them coming on. So we can get different aspects of the game development covered for them. It's going to be an exclusive show just for them on a Wednesday. So stay tuned. I'll put out everything you need to know about that very, very soon. And then we have our regular show, of course, on Thursday. Other than that, guys, I'm playing a game I can't talk about, but next week is going to be a good one. Stay tuned for Monday. There will be something on the channel. And other than that, guys, have an awesome rest of your week. Have a great weekend. Play some games. Enjoy them. And don't forget to game on.